Well,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, so I know when we first started visiting, it was right after the Maui fires,
Mhm.
and you were using the tappers just as a resource to help with nervous system regulation, and that was great, and you still are. But one of the things I feel like you've added to, or maybe you've added the tappers too, you've probably always been doing it, but just the part when people just kind of prevention. I mean, I know people are going to experience trauma in this field because it's the field they're in, but I wanted to see if you could just talk about when people are brand new hired, like what do you feel like you're doing to help prepare them? Like
Yeah.
whether it's about Bi-Tapp or other things, just what I just would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. I think it's been an ongoing journey of progress. Um, it's really been probably maybe within the last 7 to 8 years here in Hawaii that we even started doing any kind of wellness prevention training in the academies. And so that's what I did for many years is that I'd usually get a 1 hour, maybe a 2 hour block to talk about basic skills. What can you do? What are some red flags to keep an eye for? That kind of stuff, right? And that's what we did. And that was big progress over here. I'm sure it's probably done on the mainland easily, right? And other people would say it's gone on much longer over there. For us, that was a big step because that started to recognize that reflected that agencies were recognizing it, right? And so we continued that for a while. Now, once I got familiar with the tappers, I think I've explained before, I started using them with EMDR. So I first got exposed to them. But then I started realizing what it could do for people. And with first responders, yeah, sometimes it's just a therapy session that they're coming in after work and they're, uptight and agitated and had a rough day. But sometimes it's also post-critical incident, right? Where I'm not going to see them on a weekly basis, but they've got to come, they've got to bring that system down and they don't have the skills, or it's just such a big incident, right?
Right.
That sometimes we just can't even use any skill that we know. We're so overwhelmed. The system is so escalated, right?
Well said.
Yeah. And so that's where I started using the tappers, right? Then we got some funding post fire, right? And we did that a lot of that, again, trauma response kind of long term. But then we started to get more funding that said, okay, we've got to improve people's skill set before there's a major tragedy. Certainly a major tragedy like what we saw in Lahaina in 23. But first responders, they see some crazy shit, if I can say that, right? They see crazy stuff every week,
Yeah.
right? And so the idea is to say if we're coming in after the fact, yeah, we can help a little bit, but we're going to be way more effective if we come in preventatively, right? And so that's where we've been able to kind of improve our game a little bit more is that now, especially in Maui County, we've started providing the devices to our recruits. So our police recruits, our dispatcher recruits, and our fire recruits.
So how's
Well,
that? So when you say preventative, you are saying that we basically know you're all going to be exposed to heavy trauma
yep.
and you still have all those other supports in place. And then what I think, and then definitely correct me, but what I think what the tappers are adding to all the good stuff that's already happening is it's giving them an ability to have something that can regulate them like in real time because I know you're an amazing therapist and you do all these debriefings and everything, but then they've got that time in between where if they're still quite overwhelmed, do you feel like that's the gap that the tappers are filling?
That gap, but also I feel like, and I probably should look up on the science on this, but I think just from practical experience, there seems to be a little bit of deterioration as far as not necessarily stamina, but how people psychologically respond to the job, right? So, for example, if we know that first responders are going to go into fight or flight on a regular basis, right? Their system is going up,
Yep.
right? And we know that. We know what that is going to come. It is inevitable. You're going to be there multiple times a week. Just putting on that uniform is going to get you there. That means that that's already a known thing. So we have to equip that nervous system to say you got to learn how to bring it back down to baseline. Not only maybe mid shift, but definitely at the end of every shift.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that 15, 20 years down the road, your body already has the muscle memory to say, yep, we're going to get elevated, but this is how we come back down, right? Because if we don't train that system to come back down and there's no application of any skill set, guess what? Their baseline is going to go a little bit higher and a little bit higher, right? And so that's why we see guys constantly in hyperarousal, is because that's as low
Normal.
as it can go.
That's their
And
norm.
that's exactly.
Yeah.
And so if we get in there early, we're already showing that nervous system, this is how you can come back lower. And if you use this consistently, use it every day, guess what? That's muscle memory. And you are preventing that decline that sometimes can happen in some of our older generation of officers and first responders.
I think that's great. And then it also, I think the other piece is because they're going into that sympathetic activation so much and then probably dropping down, like zoning out a little bit as part of recovery.
Yep.
So, what I love is that you're teaching them that we're going to go up, but we're going to get back in that baseline, that workable range. We don't have to drop down and disengage when we go home to our families. And
Yep.
then they have energy in the tank to actually be present, more present for their families. I think that's a big deal too.
Yeah, and I think you guys have a chart or a handout that talks
Yep.
about hyperarousal or the
Hmm.
hypoarousal,
The window of
right?
tolerance. Yes.
Yeah. I think that's a great thing to bring attention to because people don't understand, like, oh, I don't just have to go there. Like
Live
that's
this
not
way.
just like what happens.
Yeah.
Right? And that I think that becomes really empowering, right? Because for so long, for all those officers and generations of first responders who did not have training like this, they didn't know there was a way to help that.
Wow.
Right. And so, yeah, now we're catching up, we're doing the work to get it preventatively so that they recognize, whoa, if I start isolating more, if I become more irritable, if I don't have the patience, I need to pay attention. I always tell my guys, that's the flag. That's your body throwing the flag. Now you have a choice. Am I going to listen to it and do something about it? Or am I just going to hide in my ego and march forward because, nope, this is what it means to be a first responder, right? And so we're challenging some old school mentality that was not productive and not healthy. And we know it contributes to a lot of the health issues, the relationship stressors, right? The outcomes,
Addiction.
absolutely,
Yeah. Because they have to
right?
have some way
That's,
to bring it down. And
yeah.
so I love that you're teaching them that's true. And let's just do it in this healthy way. I wanted to ask you too, um, when you go on on like, say, a debriefing, I'm just curious, like, how are you using the tappers in those moments?
It depends. Like sometimes I'm always assessing, like, does this person have a skill set? Right? Is there something that they have already used or I can see, you can, especially when you're in the same room with somebody, you can tell.
Yes.
And if that person is just struggling and I can observe it and see it, I won't even try to ask any more questions or anything. I'll just say, you know what? I want to put this on you. I just want you to sit there. And most of the time, they're kind of like a little bit, they're skeptical. Like, are you going to shock me? Like, what are you going to do to me? Right. But then they put it on and it brings them down. And it's interesting because sometimes I'll just, sit there and wait. And this is one thing that I've noticed with the tappers is that it brings those verbal skills back online. Right. And so usually it's spontaneously, but sometimes I'll kind of ask them a question and start seeing like, have those verbal skills come back. But sometimes it's like they'll just start talking and then they're opening up, right? I've done it that way. Sometimes with debriefings or just difficult sessions where maybe weeks or months later we're talking about a hard call. Sometimes I'll have people like they'll say, yeah, I need to talk about this call. It was a really bad case. It was whatever. And then they'll come into session and it's one word answers.
Yeah.
Or I'm like pulling. It feels like I'm pulling. It's like, that's not gonna work. If I put the tappers on them, it's amazing. You give them time, and all of a sudden they're talking in full sentences and they're able to actually describe what was painful about it, what the struggle was, where if there's moral injury, we're opening it up, right? And so there's a lot of different ways that I've used it. Sometimes like I've done like not necessarily debriefings, but let's say what's coming to mind now is there was a loss of an employee, and I was on site at the department for almost a week. Okay, so a couple days had passed, and I had somebody, people could stop in as they needed. And this officer came to me and said, I haven't been sleeping. I'm not doing okay. And they were not necessarily on the scene, but they were supporting the family,
Yeah.
right? And having a hard time sleeping. So, we'll do some tappers, we'll do, any of that bilateral stimulation, and it's magic.
Well, if
It
we can
is.
get
I
them,
love it.
if we can get them to sleep, then that's a big deal too.
Well,
You
and
want
think
to say
about
anything
it.
about sleep? Yeah, go ahead.
Post-critical incident, it is not uncommon for people to just they're stuck in that on mode,
Yeah.
right? And so they're trying, and sometimes, you can give somebody all these different, sleep hygiene things or tips or advice, and there's just times that it's not enough. And the brain just needs to be kind of activated into that decompression, right? To come down. And so, yeah, that's a lot of times that's what I will share with folks about the tappers is like, okay, if you have a hard time sleeping, if you have a hard time, at the end of your shift, any kind of coming down off of work mode, try these, right? And that's where I get the most positive feedback is people saying they're amazing. And it's funny, actually, even we did, I had already distributed devices to a class of recruits. Hmm, must have been last year, earlier in the year. And they were at the time, it was pretty early in the academy when they received them. And months later, they were going through EVOC training, which I don't know if you know what that is, but that's the tactical driving. Okay, so which is usually kind of stressful for them. And of course, they're getting graded, right? And I ran into a bunch of them in the hallway at the station. They're like, "Oh, Doc, those devices are awesome. It totally helped us with our, learning our skills and keeping our anxiety at bay."
That's awesome.
Exactly. And it's
Hmm.
like you can and this is what I've told even my training staff over at that department is to say, sometimes you're losing potentially good applicants, or not even applicants, but recruits, and they have anxiety issues. And that performance anxiety, for example,
Absolutely.
right? That's overpowering. They know the stuff, they've heard you, they understand it, they have something to contribute. But if we don't manage the anxiety, sometimes people they get told, sorry, you're not going to cut it, and you're let go.
When
Right? So,
they
yeah,
could make it. Absolutely.
yeah. And
We
so
are,
again, trying to match that for new, especially early in the career, before that belief like, oh, I'm always going to struggle with this, or I'm no good at that, or this is my weak side. Right now, we're getting ahead of that. We're building a skill so it can't even plant that seed to let it grow.
and I love that. And I love that because you taught them and then they operationalized it, like they used it while they're still in the academy and they see it works. So it's like, that's amazing. That's
Yep,
perfect.
yep.
Because then they
Maybe
don't have the opposition to help because it's just kind of like issuing them their badge. See what I mean? It's just giving them part of this is part of your equipment.
Yep. And that's what we do. So when I meet with them and we distribute the devices for the police department, I get to meet pretty much with the dispatchers and police recruits the first week of their academy. And I tell them, don't wait to use this to when you're on the road, riding solo. Do it now. It's going to help you as you're learning all this information. It's going to help you all the performance of new skills, all the stress because the academy is stressful,
Yeah.
right? And they do. And I've gotten great feedback with it. And it's even like dispatchers that went out to all of our dispatchers at Maui PD. And I tell them, you're working, put them on.
Well, that makes sense to me because they're hearing people call, usually in very high distress, and they're being exposed to that and then having to stay clear-minded to help them. I think it's
Mhm,
great. And then it would help them with recovery too.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many uses for the tappers within first response world, right? And like, I don't know if I've shared this one with you before. I actually had, again, another officer who got it after the fires. He's actually a detective. And he said, Doc, I used them to write my reports, and it's easier. It's easier for me to be able to write reports. And I was like, wow.
What do you
You,
think about that?
what do I think about that? Well, it makes sense, right? Kind of like even what I was saying earlier, those verbal skills coming online because anxiety can override,
Yeah.
right? And so it makes us think, oh, I'm dumb, or I can't, I'm not smart enough, or I can't do that thing. Often it's anxiety, right? And so if that person is able to come out of that, right, that bilateral stem is bringing that amygdala off and
Hmm.
letting your frontal cortex come back online and do the stuff, it makes sense to me. So it was just like, and I some after that, I think I started just telling people, use these, try them in a variety of ways. And I do that because people are coming to me and saying, "Hey, I tried it in this situation and it worked." So
Yeah.
it's like, why wouldn't I tell them that?
I
Right?
think the writing too, I mean, for sure anxiety. And then I was just thinking, they're having to bring up the trauma
Of
and then
course.
write about it. And that's a very difficult thing to do. So I love how the tappers are just bringing down that, like you said, that anxiety and stress. So then their executive functioning can do what it needs to do. That's great.
Yep.
Can
Yep.
you think of anything
One of
else?
the coolest. I'm trying to think. There were for a while there, I was, get guys would stop me at the station or just feedback. I mean, just I have some regular clients who use them and love them, swear by them. And like for example, some I have some clients who were first responders but lost their home in the fire, right? And so if anybody's worked in recovery after major tragedies like that, I gotta say it feels like the suffering and the trauma doesn't stop.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're 2.5 years post fire, but families are still rebuilding, and that is its own stress and it's challenging and there's not enough money and some people can't rebuild. Like there's just so much in the aftermath. And so to have those families being able to say, yep, we've got our tappers, we use them on the regular and it's helping, right? Because there's community meetings, there's all kinds of stuff, especially if they are in active rebuilding their home. It's very stressful, right? And so to have a resource that says, you know what, and I tell them, I said, this is a passive one, meaning you don't have to try to like do the skill. You just put them on, let them do the work for
Which
you.
is a huge benefit.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah.
And it's so necessary, I think, especially with first responders and the level of stuff that they're seeing, right? Because this isn't like, oh, I had a fight with my wife,
Right. They're seeing
right?
very difficult things.
Awful things,
Yeah.
like off the charts things, right? And so sometimes if we just tell somebody, oh, we'll just go do some deep breathing exercises, they want to, right? They want the relief, but they're stuck and they can't. So then if that's all I give you and I say, well, one hit wonder, you do it or you don't, that's not okay, right? And so it's the ability to say, look, we've got something that can help you even when you can't activate it,
That's
right?
good.
I think that's so powerful. And that makes me think, kind of even like some of old school first responders, right? That would say, this is not, I don't need this. I'm strong. I've got this, right? Yeah, do it for these new guys because they're kind of soft and they're kind of weak. No, if we're gonna be honest, the truth of it is that and I'm gonna say we collectively, we as your agencies, we as providers, we as the community, whatever you want to say, we actually failed you because it wasn't that you didn't need it back then. We just either we didn't know, right? The science has progressed significantly, but there's stigma, right? In all of these departments in this field as a whole that says, now we don't need that. And that was never true. That's a myth because this is human biology. Every single one of us has a nervous system. Every single one of us will get affected by things that are not common exposures, right? AKA trauma. And so, to all of those older first responders, I want you to understand this wasn't that you didn't need it. In a way, we neglected it. And so now, yeah, now our newer guys, they have the benefit of things are rolling a little bit better, but it doesn't also mean that you're a lost cause. There is an opportunity here to say, okay, yeah, maybe you got 20 years on the road or online or whatever it is that your field is. Don't give up. Don't bail on your health and wellness by failing to use something like the tappers because it will make a difference for today. And even, you know what, I got a lot of people who have really difficult relationships at home.
Yeah.
Guess what? We can still help that. I'm a big believer that there are hope for a lot of painful relationships that have been through some dirt. And if you want to change that, yeah, there's ways. And part of that is learning how to regulate your nervous system because it goes with you everywhere. Just because you don't believe in it doesn't mean it's not activated. Okay. So that's what because I know, I honestly, I love old school first responders. They're some of my favorite. And I think it's probably because they're like, rough, they're a little rough, right? But to be able to show them, like, you're not a lost cause. Yeah, you didn't have it for all these years, first part of your career, but they're here now. And now it's a choice. Because, and sometimes I'll even tap into the idea of like, okay, so you're 3 years away from retirement. What are you going to do then? Did you work all of these years, suffer all of these hours and callbacks and overtime and all the stuff to go home and just lay in bed because you're miserable and unhealthy? Probably not. So, if for nothing else, do it for your retirement, do it for the life that you do have left, right? And I think there's the younger guys are sometimes an easier sell. They're really open-minded, which is that's a strength to this generation, right? Is that they are way more open-minded and have had a little bit more, I think, learning and skill in school about mental health and wellness. But there's something also for our more seasoned guys too, right?
I just want you to know that was beautiful.
I really believe it though,
I
right? And
know, and
I
you can
talk with
tell, and that's why they listen to you because they trust you. Because not all helpers, all psychologists and therapists can do what you just did. You know what I mean?
I hope that one of them. I always tell myself because I feel like sometimes it's like you speak into a vacuum, right? And you can come forth with a good message that's legit and authentic and you care.
It resonates though. It's
I hope
different with
so.
you. I promise you. I mean, we're talking through a freaking this, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, that's so good. They would listen to you because of how you're saying it. Like you're giving them hope and you're also normalizing why they didn't get help and there's no shame to that. It's just where we were at the time and now you're inviting them to where they are now so they can enjoy their retirement rather than just live in a traumatized, shut down state. I love what you just shared. Love it.
No, and like I said, I hope that it resonates for somebody who sees it because it's true. And I think there's a lot of first responders who have no access to a specialized clinician
It's
or
the
just somebody who
truth.
gets it, right? And so
It's
if
the
they see it
truth.
on a video, that's great. But we have a really hard time we have a lot of vacancies right now, especially in law enforcement, right? And so departments are just hustling, trying to say, how do we fill these spots, right? We've got vacancy rates higher than we've had in years. And so I'll tell the training staff is like, okay, you're trying to fill the seats. You're trying to get more bodies out on the road because we're running so short. Then, if you have somebody who has a skill set, but also has anxiety on top of that, let me help.
Yeah,
Let me address that so that they can show you that they can handle. Right. And granted, that's not 100% some people, it's not the job for them.
for
And you
sure.
realize that. And
For
that's
sure.
fine. But if there's someone that we say they did okay, but boom, every time they take a test, they're struggling, or every time they get to evaluations, it falls apart. Okay, then that's not that they can't handle the job.
That's your person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I try to educate them about that is to hit their goal, which is keep more people graduating all the way through the academy. Think about it. Anxiety is the most common mental health struggle around the world, right? Regardless of gender, culture, doesn't matter. And I see it all the time, like in action. I tell people, you guys all think you don't have anxiety. It's dripping, right? And they're just like, no, not me. I'm like, yes, you, right? Even my big, tough, seasoned officers, I'm like, oh yeah, there it is. Right? You don't think your control issue has something to do with anxiety, that what happens if I don't have power and control over something?
You can get away with it, Alicia.
I do.
That's
And it's
awesome.
a, that's a God-given gift. I don't
It
know why
is
I'm
because
okay
you,
with
that's why you're
it.
with, you can handle this population because you can just do that and they'll listen to you.
I love my job though. They're great people, right? And they're an investment worth taking every time.
Wow.